yet another luggable machine I've got here at the size of a suitcase. This is an IBM machine. It's the P70. Now let's see, when we tested it, it powered on, but there was no display or image coming up, so the display is not showing anything.
So after laying around for 18 months, I guess it's about time to go for a repair. Have you ever fixed an old computer? I did, many times. I'm the vintage collector and these are my stories. The IBM P70 and its more powerful sibling, the P75, were a line of PS2 portable computers. And as such, they of course featured the microchannel architecture, MCA for short, in favor to the standard AT bus. I won't be covering the microchannel in today's episode, so bear in mind there will be a follow-up episode. Wikipedia notes the specs as follows, with 16 and 20 MHz versions of the 8386, 30 to 120 MB ESDI hard drives and up to 8 MB of RAM with an introductory price of $7,695. However, the original IBM announcement from May 9, 1989 is a bit more specific to it, stating only the 20 MHz CPU and 4 MB of RAM each. The base version was coming with a 60 MB hard drive for $76.95, whereas the 120 MB model was selling for $82.95. IBM also lists a plethora of system options, though without price indications. As there's no mention on the 16 MHz model here, I guess it was a later year's model, probably to offer at more competitive pricing. And apparently that's correct, as we can see from this announcement stating a 16 MHz model with a 30 MB hard drive and 2 MB of RAM for just $59.95 in March 1990. Wikipedia claims this machine to be fully compatible not only with PC-DOS and MS-DOS, Microsoft Windows and OS2, but also AIX. How come I suddenly have the urge for looking into AIX? The German IT magazine CT also made a review of the P70 in their issue 789, briefly mentioning OS2 and AIX, and the P70 being more than capable for them. Also worth mentioning is their price point comparison, showing that IBM's P70 was actually really competitive. What strikes me though is the huge amount of money these systems called for. To give a comparison, a Volkswagen Golf CL would call for 19,000 Deutschmark for the 55 horsepower space version at that time. Think about that for a second.
Bob, you have a new machine here from IBM. Tell us a little bit about it.
This is a full function, no compromise, portable desktop machine, and it's based on our Model 70. It's a 386 20 megahertz system, and it's got expansion slots. It comes standard with 4 megabytes of main storage, and it has disk drive options of 60 or 120 megabytes. It's an extremely powerful machine.
In 1990, IBM brought the P75, which featured SCSI hard drives in favor of the previous year's ESDI hard drives, up to 16 megabytes of RAM and a 486 CPU clocked at 33 MHz, though also upping the introductory price to a whopping $15,990 at the time of release in fall 1990. Though apparently also my machine, which clearly is a P70, as we will learn in a moment, features a 486 CPU. One that was retrofitted as an aftermarket upgrade by the pre-owner of this machine. Though before we're going to look into that, let's figure out what's wrong with my machine. So the first thing to notice when turning it on is the series of 1 long and 2 short beeps. And this typically means it's an issue with the video adapter board, especially as I don't get any video output. Still, the floppy drive seek is performed. However, there's no further activity, especially no hard drive access, so chances are the machine will be stuck on the BIOS error message screen at this point. So I was doing some research and soon found that one of the most common failures on these machines, as on most old machines, are, without a surprise, the capacitors. And since the beeps were very specifically pointing to the graphics board, I was then removing the back cover. It was quite nice to find a 10 megabits network card on the inside as well, but that's for another time. In order to remove the graphics board, which is a daughter board plugged into the system planner, I had to remove as well this construction which holds the riser card. Once I had the graphics board removed, I started a visual inspection, though luckily I didn't notice any capacitor leakage and more specifically no corrosion. That's good, and even better is the fact that these caps are all through-hole style, so it should be rather easy to remove them for new replacements. And once I did that, I refitted the graphics board and I indeed got a video output. Behold about the screen flickering, that's not a malfunction but just badly captured on camera. And exactly as I had suspected, the machine was sitting on a BIOS error screen after post. Now, IBM PS2 machines are beasts. At this point, they wouldn't boot from anything else than a so-called reference disk, which contains the system diagnostics and configuration utilities. And of course, my system would not boot from it no matter what. But that wasn't my main concern at this point, as soon after the system would go dark again, this time over not even emitting beeps when powering on. So I'd remove the entire system planner and repeat the cap swapping procedure for it as well. And ultimately this would give it a second kick to revive, although I'd still face the same issue for not booting off the reference disk. Meanwhile, I had also removed the CMOS battery, which of course wouldn't hold enough charge to keep the CMOS settings. So I swapped it for an equivalent replacement. However, even so I did multiple attempts, even with newly created reference disks, it was to no avail. Of course, I did another investigation run, from which I found that another common source of failure on these machines is the floppy drive. Some sources claim, even though with a 50-50 chance, that recapping the drive may help. But how to get the darn thing out? I found that grabbing from behind the display into the drive bay helps in pushing the drive cover upwards. Then I unfastened the ground wire and the center screw, which sits at the very bottom of the drive cage. This allows to push the entire containment upwards, so it slides out from the plastic guides. From there on, it's quite easy to unfasten the 4 sideways screws, disconnect the cables and pull the drive out. Then when looking at it closely, it's already visible that there's quite some level of corrosion, most likely because of capacitor's leakage. I tried dissolving and cleaning it, though my stomach feeling says this one ain't fixable. Ultimately, I removed the PCB so I could unsolder the old capacitors. Unfortunately, some of the solder pads suffered from this procedure, so I went with through-hole caps. I then also double-checked using a beeper if I still had proper contact after soldering the new caps. That was good so far. Just be cautious to note these 2 caps here are polarized ones, whereas those 3 here are non-polarized capacitors. And then for the moment of truth. We hear the head moving for the floppy drive seek, but once it should read from the drive, the stepper wouldn't move at all, period. So the recap didn't make it better or worse, as it's behaving exactly the same way as before. So how to proceed from here? I could try searching eBay for an identical unit, which I did but had failed. I then scouted the storage facility of Revamp IT in the hopes to find a suitable drive. And failed. Of course, I could try swapping in another floppy drive, But the catch is that IBM introduced proprietary cabling for their PS2 systems. So one must go with sort of a homebrew custom cable. Or, what I then ultimately pursued, go and build a custom adapter as shown on this GitHub project. So I went to ask today's episode sponsor PCBWay if they would step in, and they said yes. Good thing, as I wanted to try out PCBWay's full PCB assembly service for a long time but never found an occasion until now. But the problem was that on the GitHub project there's no ready-to-use bill of materials. So I had to fumble around myself in KiCad to add the actual parts, including manufacturer and part numbers, to create a BOM suitable for ordering with PCBWay. And boy did I make a mistake here, as I was not paying attention to the exact spacing for the header, because as you can see here, it's off with the spacing. No way to solder it on. So I had to research another part before the PCB could be finally assembled. Though once I had it, it looked very nicely done and it fits perfectly. You'll notice, however, that given the physical characteristics of my floppy drive, there will be an issue here for the Molex connector. No way I can fit the standard floppy drive power plug behind the adapter. So I soldered the cable directly onto the backside of the PCB to feed the power and ground into it. It's kind of a semi-permanent conversion that's still reversible. Originally I planned to use the different floppy drive with the power connector on the left hand side, however one thing to note is the total length of the drive. In order to fit with the adapter in place, one should not exceed more than 14 centimeters. And that drive I originally wanted to use was too long, so I had to swap it for a shorter one, which was this one, having the power adapter on the wrong side. On a side note, I had PCBWay produce 5 of those adapter boards. I'll keep another one for myself, but that makes 3 available to give away. So if you need one for your P70 repair, feel free to get in touch with me. You still have to pay the postage to your location, but you'll get the pre-assembled adapter for free. If it works, of course. Now, does it work? Oh yes, it does. What shall I say more? Remounting everything back is no big deal. The only thing I had to destroy, as in cutting away a bit of material, was the iconic blue eject button in order to make it fit with the replacement drive. So even though it's no longer an original IBM PS2 drive inside, I'm quite satisfied with the result. So now I can finally look into that CPU mystery. Remember me mentioning this machine sporting an aftermarket upgrade CPU, the TX486DLC-33GA. Following the serial number of this machine, this one originally featured a 386 CPU running at 20 MHz. So it's clearly a first generation P70 released in 1989. Now, the TI486DLC isn't actually an original design by Texas Instruments, but just an improved derivative of the Cyrix CX486DLC, which came in June 1992. While Texas Instruments produced the Cyrix CPUs, they were eventually allowed to create and sell their own version, which involved paying royalties to Cyrix. The Cyrix CX486 was intended to compete with the lower-end Intel 486SX CPUs to some extent, but also offering an upgrade path for 386-based systems. Thus, the CX486 was available as a 132-pin PGA version that would plug seamlessly into the 386 socket. In addition, these CPUs were rather cheaply priced at $119, which was less than half than the $289 Intel called for their 486SX CPUs at the time. However, the CX486 and thus also the TI486 were not true 486 CPUs. They were often described as 386 CPUs with a 486 instruction set. Still, they came in many variations like the CX486SLC that, like the Intel SX CPUs, featured only a 16 bits wide data bus, whereas its bigger sibling, the CX486DLC, offered a full 32 bits wide data bus like the Intel DX CPUs. Looking again at my machine here, we'll notice two things. For one, the TX486DLC is spec'd as a 33 MHz CPU. And for the numeric coprocessor, it says it's a 25 MHz CPU. Now, that doesn't make much sense as the frontside bus of this machine is clocked at 20 MHz. While you can plug in a higher rated CPU, it will not accelerate a bit as they'll run at the maximum 20 MHz. As for differing clock speeds, there seem to be some mainboards that support async clocks for the CPU and the FPU, but to be on the safe side, CPU and FPU are better to have the same clock speed. Again, it doesn't matter for this machine as the frontside bus is anyway 20 MHz. One could of course mod the mainboard, like Epitronics did, effectively swapping the crystal to achieve a higher bus clock. But that's nothing for me, as I'm not after maxing out my system. I want to keep it as close as possible to the original state.
But isn't that a contradiction with your floppy drive mod before?
No, as this is fully reversible and I can mount an original P70 floppy drive anytime again, bringing it back to the fully original state. So I naturally want to keep the mainboard in its original condition as well. That's also why I eventually decided to swap the TI486DLC for an Intel 386 CPU. Though apparently I don't have a 20 MHz version, just a 33 MHz one, neither for the FPU, so I'll be starting to scout for a matching set. Anyway, the reason for swapping was mostly because, except for the 486 instruction set, I didn't see a benefit from the TI486DLC CPU. It was no surprise to see both CPUs yield the same performance rating in Norton System Information, again mostly because of the 20 MHz bus clock. Now, I know this is a synthetic benchmark and it is said that one can expect somewhat better performance even so from the CX486 because it has a 1 KB first level cache. If you use a later revision of the TI486 variant, it even brings an 8 KB cache. For mainboards which are not aware or ready for Cyrix CPUs, the cache will be turned off on power up, and you need a software driver or command line tool to enable it. This may or may not speed things up a little bit in some situations, but I didn't really explore this as I honestly didn't think it was worthwhile. One reason was that my machine, despite my previous repairs, still occasionally didn't turn fully on and threw random BIOS errors. I found these all went away when plugging in the Intel 386 CPU. So either my TI486 DLC CPU is faulty or not fully compatible to this mainboard. And reason number 2 was that if I wanted to max out this system and really take a benefit from the Cyrix 486 CPU upgrade, as in getting a real speed up, then I would go for a different model of the CPU. Okay, there's some enthusiasts who seem to have even managed to pop in a Pentium overdrive into a 386 machine. That's really a cool experiment to prove a point, but not mine either. Instead, I choose the TI486SXLC CPU, which according to the spec sheet here supports internal clock doubling. So instead of swapping out the crystal, I just plug in this CPU, which still runs at an external 20 MHz clock and uses internal clock doubling to reach 40 MHz. So it's quite similar to the 486DX2 CPUs which use the same trick. Of course, one would surely not get any wonders from this, but it definitely should bring a noticeable speed bump. But look, when scouting on eBay I found this ridiculously high priced unit which has a never in my life price surcharge. Some people are really off the planet with their value proposition. So for the time I leave my P70 with a 386 CPU in place, which, despite the clock speed misalignments, is closer to the original factory default configuration. Or what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below.
Oh, and by the way, if you're asking yourself how to support me and this channel, consider looking on my wish list for retro gear or a channel membership subscription. This would allow me to bring you even more interesting topics in the future. Thanks for watching and see you again next Sunday.
Next on the Vintage Collector, with the IBM P70 back to life again, I wanted to look into those network cards. But microchannel is a different beast I never had any touching points with, and I found it's more than just plugging in adapter cards. The reference disk is your friend, and the adapter definition files if you so happen to identify your add-in cards beforehand.